the Whispers of Blackwood Manor. The mist clung to Blackwood Manor like a spectral shroud, swallowing the once grand Victorian edifice in an unending gray. A lone figure, Arthur Blackwood, renowned historian and heir to this desolate inheritance, squinted through the swirling vapors. A cryptic letter from his deceased father beckoned him to the heart of this forgotten valley, stirring a storm of unease within him. This wasn't just a house. It was a chilling summons, a whispered promise of secrets best left buried. The iron gates groaned in protest as Arthur pushed them open, their rusty hinges screaming a mournful tune. The air hung heavy with a cloying dampness, the scent of decay clinging to the ivy-strangled facade. Pushing open the colossal oak doors, he stepped into a cavernous hallway. Dust motes danced in the flickering light of a single oil lamp, casting grotesque shadows from the faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls. His estranged sister, Eleanor, materialized at the top of the grand staircase. Her once vibrant eyes were now sunken and hollow, the ghost of a smile flickering on her pale lips. "Arthur," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper in the suffocating silence. "You shouldn't have come." Unease gnawed at Arthur. Eleanor's descent into paranoia over the years had strained their relationship, but the raw fear in her voice was a new, chilling element. A gaunt figure emerged from the shadows, Gideon, the caretaker. His eyes, devoid of warmth, held a disquieting knowledge that sent a shiver down Arthur's spine. The following days were a descent into a waking nightmare. Doors creaked open on their own, disembodied moans echoed through empty corridors, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures darted at the periphery of his vision. The flickering gaslights played tricks on his mind, morphing harmless furniture into monstrous shapes. An oppressive silence punctuated by these unsettling occurrences clung to the manor like a shroud. Driven by a morbid curiosity and a gnawing sense of familial responsibility, Arthur delved into the mansion's dusty archives. In the heart of the library, behind a tapestry depicting a blasphemous ritual, he discovered a hidden chamber. Inside, cobwebs draped a dusty diary, its leather cover worn smooth by countless hands. The faded script, penned by his great-grandfather, spoke of a forbidden pact, a bargain struck with entities beyond the veil for wealth and power. The consequences: a generational curse, a malignant entity feeding on the despair of the Blackwood bloodline. Arthur's blood turned to ice. The Faceless Ones, the entities his ancestor had made a pact with, were real. They thrived on fear and despair, and Eleanor, with her fragile mental state, was a beacon in the darkness. Eleanor's behavior spiraled downwards. She spoke in hushed tones of whispers in the dead of night, of a growing dread that gnawed at her from within. Arthur was convinced she was being manipulated, a conduit for the Faceless Ones to enter the living world. Desperation fueled Arthur's research. He scoured the diary for clues, for a way to break the curse before it consumed Eleanor. He unearthed fragmented rituals, cryptic symbols, and a horrifying realization: Blackwood Manor itself was a conduit, a gateway built by his ancestor as part of the pact. Days bled into weeks, the oppressive silence of the manor broken only by the relentless whispers and Eleanor's mounting fear. Fueled by a desperate love for his sister and a burgeoning sense of responsibility, Arthur embarked on a dangerous plan. He would use the remnants of the forbidden ritual, not to summon the Faceless Ones, but to sever the connection, to banish them back to the abyss from which they came. The ritual chamber lay deep within the bowels of the manor, a dimly lit room reeking of incense and damp earth. The air hung heavy with an unseen malevolent presence. Arthur traced the symbols etched into the walls with a trembling hand, chanting the fragmented incantations from the diary. The flickering candlelight danced grotesquely on the walls, casting macabre shadows that writhed and contorted. As he uttered the final syllable, the air crackled with unseen energy. The ground trembled, portraits screeched from their frames, and the very fabric of reality seemed to tear at the seams. A monstrous pressure built within the chamber, a formless entity pushing back against Arthur's attempt to sever the connection. Just as he faltered, Eleanor burst into the chamber, her eyes glazed over with a maddening light. The Faceless Ones were using her, promising her solace from the Whispers in exchange for her cooperation. Arthur's heart ached for his sister, but he knew reason wouldn't work. He had to appeal to the love that still flickered beneath the darkness. "Eleanor," he pleaded, his voice hoarse with emotion, "this isn't you. They're feeding on your fear, twisting your mind. Remember who you are, remember us. Remember the times we laughed together as children, the stories we shared." His words seemed to pierce the fog clouding her eyes. A flicker of recognition, of their shared past, sparked in her gaze. But the Faceless Ones were powerful. They fought back, tightening their hold on her, amplifying the whispers that filled her head with promises of oblivion. Arthur watched in anguish as Eleanor swayed, tears streaming down her face. He needed a diversion, something to break the Faceless One's focus. Glancing around the chamber, his eyes landed on a dusty crystal orb perched on a pedestal. It was an heirloom, rumored to possess protective properties. With a desperate lunge, Arthur snatched the orb, its surface cool against his palm. As he held it aloft, it pulsed with a faint luminescence, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly light. The Faceless Ones shrieked, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of reality. The air grew frigid, the whispers morphing into a cacophony of hate and rage. Eleanor cried out, clutching her head as if in pain. The luminescence from the orb intensified, pushing back against the darkness that clung to her. The Faceless Ones, momentarily weakened, focused their malevolent energy on the orb, trying to shatter it. Arthur seized the moment. He launched into the final incantation, pouring his remaining strength into his voice. The chamber shook violently, dust raining down from the ceiling. The orb flared brightly, then shattered with a deafening boom. A wave of pure, blinding energy erupted from the shattered orb, engulfing the chamber. The screams of the Faceless Ones echoed through the halls, fading into a chilling silence. When the light subsided, Arthur collapsed onto the cold stone floor, his body drained but his spirit soaring. He looked towards Eleanor, who lay still on the floor. Her face, pale but peaceful, held a hint of a smile. The darkness had receded, leaving behind the ghost of the girl he once knew. Relief washed over Arthur, a bittersweet euphoria mixed with the lingering echoes of terror. They had won, but at a cost. The Faceless Ones might be banished, but the scars remained. The following days were a blur of exhaustion and recovery. Gideon, surprisingly helpful, assisted Arthur in preparing for their departure. The oppressive atmosphere of the manor had lifted, replaced by an unsettling sense of emptiness. Arthur made arrangements for Eleanor. A renowned psychiatric facility, specializing in treating trauma, was her only hope for a semblance of normalcy. Bidding farewell to his sister, a silent promise hung heavy in the air: to continue his research, to ensure the Faceless Ones never returned. Back in the bustling city, Arthur found it difficult to reintegrate into his old life. The whispers of the Faceless Ones still echoed in the quiet corners of his mind, the chilling memories of Blackwood Manor clinging to him like a shroud. He threw himself into his work, devouring ancient texts and forgotten lore, searching for answers. He learned of other pacts made with entities beyond the veil, of other bloodlines cursed for generations. He became a guardian, a solitary champion against the unseen horrors that lurked in the shadows. Years passed. Arthur became a renowned authority on the occult. His theories met with skepticism but also with grudging respect. He never returned to Blackwood Manor. It stood as a stark reminder of his past, a silent sentinel against the darkness. One stormy night, a frantic message arrived from a remote village nestled in the same valley as Blackwood Manor. Whispers in the night, strange occurrences, and a growing fear that mirrored his own experiences. Arthur knew what he had to do. He packed his bags, a familiar mixture of dread and determination filling him. The fight against the Faceless Ones, it seemed, wasn't over. The road led him back to the mist-shrouded valley, leading him back to the secrets of Blackwood Manor, and perhaps to a darkness he could never truly vanquish. But Arthur, scarred but not broken, now walked this path not just for himself, but for all those threatened by the unseen horrors that lurked beyond the veil.